The jungle was alive with sounds, but none like this. Jason's boots crunched over broken leaves as he pushed through the thick alien vines. The air was hot and wet, heavy with the smell of strange flowers and danger. His ship had crashed just hours ago. Smoke still rose behind him from the wreck. And he knew rescue was far away. He wasn't supposed to be here. This planet wasn't marked as dangerous. But nothing about it felt safe now. Trees twisted like claws. Insects buzzed like whispers, and something unseen watched from the shadows. Then he heard it, a scream, sharp, high, and full of terror. It echoed through the jungle, bouncing between the black trunks and thorny vines. Jason froze, heart pounding. That wasn't an animal cry. 'Twas someone in pain. Without thinking, he ran toward it, pushing through branches, thorns cutting his arms. Mud clinging to his boots, the scream came again, weaker this time, then silence. Jason burst into a small clearing. His breath caught. She was lying on the ground, her purple skin pale, veins darkening across her arm. Her eyes were wide but fading. A long, deep bite mark tore across her forearm nearby. The body of a massive snake-like creature still twitched, its mouth open, fangs dripping with black venom. Jason dropped to his knees. Hey, stay with me," he said gently. The alien girl blinked slowly. Her lips trembled, but no words came. He looked at the wound. The venom was spreading fast. Her hand was already turning cold. Jason had seen bites like this before. Not on Earth, but in war zones. He knew what it meant. She had minutes, maybe less. He looked around. No medkit. No help. And then he made a choice. A stupid, desperate, human choice. He bent down, pressed his mouth to the wound, and sucked. The taste was awful, bitter, burning, like acid. But he didn't stop. Spit the venom into the dirt, sucked again. And again, behind him. He felt movement. He turned slightly. A group of aliens stood at the edge of the clearing, half hidden behind vines and leaves. They didn't come closer. They just watched, silent, shocked. He didn't care. She was trembling, but she was breathing. Jason tore a piece of his shirt and wrapped it around the bite, tight, to stop the spread. Then he looked into her eyes. "You're gonna be okay, I promise," he whispered. One of the aliens stepped forward, an older female, her face marked with white tribal paint. "You touched her blood," she said quietly, voice cold. Jason stood slowly, lifting the alien girl in his arms. "She would have died," he said. The old alien said nothing. But others whispered among themselves. Jason didn't wait for permission. He pushed past them, carrying the girl through the jungle. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep her alive. Behind him, the jungle closed again, thick and dark, but the scream that had once echoed through it was now silent. Not because she was gone, but because a human had answered it. And the jungle had heard him back. The air inside the small wooden hut was quiet, except for the shallow breathing of the alien girl lying on the makeshift bed. Her name was still unknown to him, but Jason had done everything he could. He cleaned the wound, tied it again with the cleanest cloth he had, and sat beside her, watching the rise and fall of her chest like a fragile rhythm. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, confused and tired. She looked around, then at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you save me?" Jason gave her a small smile. "Because no one else did," he said, his voice calm but filled with quiet anger. "I couldn't just leave you like that." She blinked, trying to understand. No one had ever touched her like that. Not even her own kind. The venom should have killed her. But somehow the human had fought it, even when the others had watched and done nothing. "My name is Sierra," she whispered. Jason nodded. "I'm Jason," he said gently. "You're safe now." But she looked away. No, she said, her voice trembling. You touched my blood. They will say you broke the law. Jason frowned. I saved your life. That's all. Sierra looked at him again, this time longer, as if seeing something unfamiliar in his eyes, something that made her chest feel warm and strange. It wasn't just his actions, it was the way he had looked at her like she mattered. Even when she was fading, outside, footsteps came close. Shadows moved under the curtain made of leaves, and voices whispered in a language Jason didn't understand. Sierra stiffened, fear returning to her eyes. They've come, she whispered, the council. The door opened, 3 aliens entered, tall, dressed in robes. Faces painted with red and black marks. The one in the middle had gold rings around. His long fingers, he was the speaker. You, he said, pointing to Jason. Come. Jason looked at Sierra. Then stood. She needs rest, he said firmly. She will rest, after the judgment, the elder replied coldly. They led him out into the center of the village. Fires burned in large stone bowls, and dozens of eyes stared from all sides. Some angry, some afraid, but none kind. A voice shouted. He poisoned her with human sickness. Another hissed. He touched sacred skin. He must be punished. Jason stood tall, even though his muscles ached and his head spun from the jungle heat. He wasn't afraid of them, not after what he'd seen, not after what he'd done. Then Sierra appeared, leaning weakly on the doorframe. Her legs shaking, but her voice clear. He saved me, she said loudly. When no one else moved, when I was dying, he came to me. The crowd murmured, shocked. The elder turned to her. You speak for him? I do, she said. And if your law says saving a life is wrong, then maybe your law is broken. The elder looked at her for a long moment, then at Jason. Silence spread like fire through the village. Even the wind held its breath. Jason didn't know what would come next, but in that moment, he knew one thing. Sierra was no longer just an alien girl he had rescued in the jungle. She had just stood up for him against her whole world, and nothing after this would ever be the same again. Rain fell on the village roofs like whispers from the sky, soft and steady, but inside the council chamber. The air was thick and sharp, like a blade held at the throat. Jason stood in the middle of the stone floor, arms bound with a glowing vine. Guards watched him from each side, faces unreadable. Sierra had been taken away minutes ago, her body still weak. Her words still echoing in Jason's ears. She had stood before her people and defended him. But now he stood alone. The elder council circled him slowly, each wearing heavy robes dyed with symbols he couldn't understand, and each carrying a curved staff that tapped on the stone with every step. You are not of our blood, one said. Voice like dry leaves, you entered sacred ground, uninvited. You laid your mouth upon royal flesh, another added. This is not a kindness in our world. It is violation. Jason lifted his chin, wet hair sticking to his face. I didn't come here to break your laws, he said. I came because I heard someone screaming. They didn't respond, didn't even blink. A taller elder stepped forward, his eyes the color of old fire. You say your blood is clean. That your actions were pure? Jason didn't speak. He knew there was no word that could change their minds. The tall elder raised his staff. And the air grew colder. The punishment is exile, he declared. You will leave this place and never return. Your feet will not touch this soil again. The guards moved, gripping Jason's arms harder, but before they could drag him away, the heavy door slammed open. Sierra entered, weak but burning with fury. Her arms still wrapped in cloth, her steps unsure but determined. You send him away, she said loudly, but you forget what he did. He faced death to save me. He broke our ways, an elder answered. He disrespected your name, Sierra. Stepped closer to Jason. Standing beside him now, the guards hesitated. My name, she said softly. Means nothing if I let someone die while I watch. She turned to Jason and touched his arm gently. The first time anyone in the village had touched him without fear. If you send him away, I will go too, she said. Gasps filled the chamber. Someone dropped their staff. Jason stared at her, unsure if he should speak. Unsure if this was bravery or madness. You would leave your people for this creature? An elder asked, shocked. He is not a creature, Sarah said. He is the only one who treated me like I mattered. He is more honor than any of you. The silence that followed was deep. Like the jungle at night before a storm, the tall elder lowered his staff slowly. If he stays, he said, you must take responsibility for what he has done. I will, Sarah whispered. His action was my salvation. The vines fell. From Jason's wrists, the guards stepped back. But the faces around him were not friendly, not welcoming. They were cold, bitter, afraid of change. Jason didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He looked at Sarah, her hand still trembling on his arm, and whispered, you didn't have to do this. She looked up at him, her voice quiet but steady. I know, outside, the rain stopped. But inside the chamber, something else had broken. Not a law, not a rule, but a line between what was forbidden and what was right. And now, both of them would pay the price. Together, the sky above the jungle had changed. No longer blue, no longer gold. Now just thick gray clouds that swallowed sunlight and hope. Jason walked ahead, cutting through vines with a dull blade. His clothes soaked from the rain, his body tired. Behind him, Sarah followed in silence, her steps uneven. Her injured arm wrapped in new cloth. They had been walking for hours. Deeper into the wild, where no trails remained, no people, no laws. The village had not begged her to stay. Even her father, who watched with cold eyes as she walked away. Beside the human, she hadn't looked back. Jason stopped near a ridge and pointed to a hollow beneath the rocks. We can rest there, he said softly. She nodded, but her legs shook. She stumbled, and Jason rushed to catch her, holding her steady. You should be resting, he said. Not walking through this. I chose this, she replied, her voice low. I knew what it meant. Inside the rocky shelter, Jason built a small fire, careful to use only dry wood. Sarah sat near the flames, her purple eyes reflecting the light. Why did you really do it? She asked, back in the clearing. He didn't answer right away. He just watched the flames. His voice came slowly. Because no one else moved. That's not the reason, she whispered. Jason looked at her, saw the pain, the confusion, the strength she tried to hide, and he finally said, because it wasn't about you being alien. It was about you being someone who was hurting, someone who needed help. Sarah's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, a strange silence grew between them, not cold, not awkward, just full of unspoken truth. Suddenly, the fire cracked loudly, and Jason stiffened, not from the sound, but from something else. He stood and looked into the trees. His hand on the blade, Sarah sensed it to movement. Rustling leaves. A low growl that wasn't wind. Jason whispered, "We're not alone." From the shadows, 2 yellow eyes blinked, then more. 6 in total, low to the ground and wide apart. "It's them," Sarah whispered. "The fang beasts, same as the one that bit me." Jason gripped the blade tighter, his heart pounding. "They followed your scent." The creatures crawled closer, snake-like bodies with long legs and dripping jaws. Jason stepped in front of Sarah. "Stay behind me," he said, voice calm. Even though fear clawed at his chest, she grabbed a thick branch and stood beside him, not behind. "I won't watch again," she said. "I'll fight this time." The first beast lunged. Jason dodged and slashed. The blade cut its cheek. Black blood splashed onto the rocks. The creature hissed and retreated, but the others circled. They were surrounded, 2 against 6. With no way to run, Jason stood firm. Shoulder to shoulder with the alien girl he once saved, now ready to fight with him. And in that terrible moment, as the beasts prepared to strike again, Jason realized something strange, something beautiful. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. They were protecting each other. The first beast leaped, and everything moved in flashes. Jason ducked low, his blade slashing upward. Metal met flesh with a wet snap. The creature screamed, black blood sprayed across the stones. But another beast was already diving from behind. Syrah didn't wait. She swung her heavy branch with both hands. It cracked against the snake creature's skull. A sickening crunch followed, and it dropped at her feet, twitching. They fought like 2 pieces of one instinct, fast, breathless, desperate. Jason had trained with soldiers, with machines, with codes and drills, but none of that had prepared him for this, the wild rhythm of surviving in a place that hated his presence. And Syrah, daughter of a tribe that now called her cursed, swung and moved with raw fury, every motion defying the weakness in her wounded arm, every strike a scream. Her throat couldn't give 2 beasts down for still circling, fangs dripping. Eyes locked on the pair. Jason bled from the shoulder now. Syrah's arm trembled too much to lift the branch again. Then the largest one slithered forward. Mouth wide, tongue flicking. It was slower, older, smarter. It had watched them fight. And now it moved to finish what its kin could not. Jason dropped the blade. It was broken, useless. He reached down and grabbed a jagged rock. Not to win, just to buy time, but Syrah stepped forward, her voice rising in a sharp, strange sound, not a scream, not a cry, but a command in her native tongue. The creature paused, confused. Jason looked at her, confused too. She shouted again, louder, and pounded her chest with her hand. The beast growled, blinked once, then backed away. Slowly, Jason stared as the other 3 followed. Crawling back into the trees without another sound, Syrah dropped to her knees, breathing hard, her body shaking. Jason rushed to her side, held her shoulders. "What did you say?" Her lips curled into a faint smile. It was an old hunting chant. "For my mother's bloodline," she whispered. "Sometimes even beasts remember the voice of royalty." Jason laughed, breathless, still stunned. "Remind me never to argue with you." They rested under the ridge until the light changed again. The jungle breathed slower now. The danger passed for the moment. Jason wrapped her arm again, and this time Syrah didn't flinch. She just looked at him, calm, steady. "You don't belong in exile," Jason said suddenly. "You're strong, brave. You're more than they deserve. I don't care what they think anymore," she replied. "But I care what they fear." Jason tilted his head. "What do they fear?" "They fear what you showed them," she said, her voice soft. "That honor can come from outside their blood." He looked at the jungle path and then back at her. "We should go back," he said. "They need to see us again, not as outcasts, but as survivors." Syrah didn't argue, didn't hesitate. She just nodded once, so they packed what little they had and began the long walk back to the village, not as strangers, not as a savior and the saved, but as to who had faced death and stood side by side. And this time they wouldn't arrive quietly. The drums stopped when they saw her. The villagers had been gathering for the dusk meal, bowls in hand, voices low, firelight glowing across the stone square. Then someone looked toward the jungle path and gasped. Syrah was walking toward them, slow but steady, her feet caked in dirt, clothes torn, hair wild, and beside her walked the human blood on his shirt, blade strapped across his back, eyes sharp like carved steel. No one spoke, not yet. Not even the elders. Whispers ran like sparks. They survived. She should be dead. he came back. Jason didn't look left or right. His gaze stayed locked on the central fire where the council sat, where judgment had once cast them into the wild. They didn't kneel this time. They didn't beg. They simply stood in the heart of the village like they belonged there, because after what they had survived, they did. Sira lifted her chin and said only one word, "Look." She pulled back the cloth around her arm and revealed the scar. No longer swollen, no longer poisoned. It had healed, clean, pure. Then she unrolled the skin of the beast they had killed, its head still attached. Eyes closed, mouth open, fangs visible. She dropped it at the feet of the elders without a sound. The fire cracked, but no one moved. Jason finally spoke. "We didn't come to ask," he said. "We came to show you what we are now." One of the younger warriors stepped forward. "You should be dead," he said slowly. "How did you survive them?" Sira looked at him without fear. "Because I wasn't alone." The crowd shifted. Murmurs grew louder, some in awe, some in fear, but all watching the same thing. The girl who had once been weak, now standing taller than any warrior beside a man who was never supposed to belong. An elder stepped forward, the one with the gold rings. He looked tired now, older somehow. The lines on his face deepened not by age, but by truth. "You disobeyed us," he said. "You broke our law." Jason said nothing, neither did Sira. The elder looked down at the beast's head, then at the people gathering around. "But you brought back what none of us ever dared face," he continued. "And you returned not with hatred, but with proof." He turned to the others. "What are we, if we fear those who save our own?" No one answered, but something in the air shifted. A small child walked forward, eyes wide, and gently touched Jason's arm. "You saved her." The child whispered, "Thank you." And that was the beginning. Others came closer, one by one, not with cheers, not with open arms, but with quiet respect, nods, and eyes that no longer looked away. Jason felt Sira's hand brush against his, not grabbing, not clinging, just touching. Like two rivers meeting at the edge, not needing words, they had come back not for revenge, not for praise, but for something deeper, to show that survival itself was a form of defiance. And in that moment, the village began to change. A new dawn rose over the village, soft and golden, but different somehow. Not just in light, but in the way people moved, in the way they looked at each other. The square where Jason once stood in chains now held no guards, no weapons, only quiet. Voices and open hands. Sira stood before the sacred pool, her robes clean for the first time in many days, her hair braided by the village elders, not as a sign of control, but as a gesture of respect. Jason watched from the edge, uncertain, his heart calm but unsure where he truly belonged. Then Sira turned to him and reached out her hand. "You bled for me," she said softly, her voice rising above the water surface. "You walked beside me through death. You gave me strength when mine was gone." Jason didn't speak. He just stepped forward, closer to the one person who had never asked him to prove his worth. "You do not carry our blood," she said, louder now, "but your spirit is stronger than many who do." She lowered her head and knelt. And the entire village gasped, a royal kneeling to a human. Jason knelt too, not to match her, but because. The moment called for stillness. From behind them, the elders stepped forward. But this time, they brought no chains, no accusations. Only 2 crystal rings wrapped in thin cloth, a symbol of union not made for power, but for bond. The elder with the gold rings spoke, by jungle law and sacred right. "You are now bound," he said, "not by fear, not by tradition, but by choice." Jason looked at Sira, her eyes full of fire and peace. And for the first time, he felt it not as a visitor, not as a stranger, but as someone who had carved a place with his bare hands. his own pain and quiet courage. The bond was sealed, not with a kiss, not with ceremony, but with joined hands in the water. Later that night, as stars lit the sky and drums echoed softly through the trees, Jason sat near the fire, children surrounding him, asking about the beasts, about the blood, about how it felt to fight beside a princess. He laughed and told them simple truths, that fear was real, but it never wins if you keep moving. That kindness isn't weakness, and that's sometimes saving. One life can save your own too. Sierra sat beside him, her head resting against his shoulder, their silence speaking louder than words. The jungle that once screamed now sang a different song, not of death, but of unity. Of what happens when one human defies fate with nothing but a blade, a heartbeat, and a choice. And so the legend lived, not of a warrior or a royal, but of two souls who met at the edge of the world and walked back as one.